Here we go. Watch what you say. You've been warned. Right, everyone. Well, thanks for coming along tonight and jumping on the call. The way the session will work is we've got Scotty CREAN on board, who's going to sort of give us a few insights around the physical pillar. We've got a range of things we thought we might cover off, but really the idea of the session is just to keep it pretty open, really. And if you've got questions at any stage, either pop them into the chat, or just unmute yourself and ask the question that way. I think that'll be fine as well. So, and we've got Walshy or Ben Van Berkel in the background, and they might be able to help me out as well if we get too many questions coming through. But what I'll try and do is I'll share my screen here. Can you see that at all?
Yeah.
Does that come through? Perfect.
There's even background music.
Oh, who have I got on? If you can just mute your speaker. I'll just figure out who that is. Anyway, we'll carry on. So yeah, like I say, we'll just go through the physical pillar side of things tonight, and start off by just welcoming Scotty on board. He's our, I guess, our conditioner, our trainer for the professional referee group, and does a bit of work with the wider New Zealand referees, high performance team, and the like. And we picked up Scott at the start of this year, and off the back of obviously a number of years. Many of you will know Jamie Tout. He had a few too many things on his plate, so he directed us to Scott, and yeah, it's been fantastic. Change of ideas and just yeah, some new thoughts coming in, and obviously, as you can see there on the screen, a fair bit of experience across the rugby environment. So Scotty, welcome aboard. And thanks for coming on tonight. Do you just want to talk us through a bit of your background? We've got there on the screen.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers for having me on, and g'day to everyone. Yeah, I was from WRRA originally, and went to WRRA Boys High and did my schooling through there, and ended up studying in Hamilton for a few years. Went down the exercise science path. I wasn't quite good enough a sportsman to make it professionally or anything like that. So for me at the time, I was always interested in that side. And yeah, got a shot with Bay of Plenty to start my rugby sort of experience off, I guess, and went through the academy with them, and a little bit with the first team. I think it was still called the ITM Cup, or might have been even the last the NPC at that time. And then
NPC way back then, wasn't it? New Zealand Cup,
yeah,
almost.
I think it was. Yeah, I can't even remember. Might have been ITM, just switched to ITM. I'm not sure. And then yeah, from there, out of the blues, got an opportunity to head over to France to Clermont.
So how did that come about? It's a bit of a random jump to go from the sun of the Bay to south of France.
No, it was, mate. It was totally sort of out of the blue. I knew Vern Cotter, who was a previous Bay of Plenty coach. He was over at Clermont at the time. He'd been over there since about 2005, 2006. So I knew his brother fairly well, he was sort of coaching, and he played club rugby for Te Puke, and he got in touch and said sort of Vern's looking for someone, preferably from the Southern Hemisphere, to come over and sort of help out and give some sort of different ideas, I guess. And they had an SNC guy, a French guy already in place, who was sort of running the show on his own with quite a big squad of players, about sort of 35, 40 players. So that's how it came about, and then yeah, ended up staying for 6 seasons.
Wow. Who were there? Any Kiwi guys you worked with during your time in the French top 14 that came through the club?
Yeah, there was there was a big international mix. There was always a sort of there was a lot of different sort of internationals, nationalities, Kiwis, Aussies, a few Georgians there as well. But yeah, we had who do we have? Benson Stanley, Sitivini Sivivatu was there for a bit. Who else? Mike Delaney spent a bit of time there. Yeah, Brock James, who played a bit in New Zealand as well.
Oh, he became a bit of a rock star over there, didn't he? He went real good in that environment.
Yeah, he was a bit of a local legend there because they, I mean, their history was that they'd lost quite a few finals, and then finally in 2010 got the monkey off the back and managed to win the top 14.
Nice.
So,
and what was it like going into the top 14 environment? Like, you hear a lot of stories. You know, I've heard stories of props going over there, and all they want them to do is get big, get massive, put on the kilos, and scrum. Don't worry about moving the ball around the field or expensive play. You just turn up when there's a scrum. Is that sort of a little bit of what you saw, or how did you find the physical training side of things and the professionalism around that side of things?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, your tight head prop in France is a pretty valuable asset. They're pretty sought after. That's hence there's a few Georgians sort of floating around in that French league because they tend to be fairly good scrummagers. I guess it was just speaking with my experience at Claremont, Vern's influence there. He was obviously been involved in New Zealand and with the Crusaders prior to that. He was pretty keen on the physical, the S&C side. He pushed that and was good to work for in that space because that was an important part. He saw as being a little bit of a point of difference, I guess, with some of the other French teams, making trying to have fitness as a bit of a, particularly when you're playing, because it's a long season and you can't play your best team every week. So those games on the road that tend to be a little bit tougher to win traditionally.
It's a real grind, that top 14, isn't it? Where they play a lot of footy and just get, especially the international guys, look like they earn their dollar over there and really get flogged. For those who probably don't know too much about Claremont, I'd recommend going and find some, I don't know, maybe on YouTube somewhere, some footage of the Claremont, the ground and the spectators and the environment and the pre-match build-up. Like, there's a guy, isn't there, Scotty, who sort of gets the crowd all fired up and he says something in French. I don't know what he's saying, but the crowd are loving it and the flags are going. It's something quite special, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the home crowd atmosphere it's amazing. That was one of the highlights, I guess, for me. It was some of the, particularly around the Heineken Cup and any of the playoff sort of games, quarterfinals and things like that, and even it's just some of the pool games. The atmosphere was incredible, yeah. And you'd get 18,000 pretty much week in, week out. So a real rugby town and good supporters, pretty vocal. They've got all the songs and they make for an impressive atmosphere.
Yeah, pretty daunting for those coming on and coming to play there. And then obviously some time with the Georgian team, which I'd imagine it would have been quite a good time to be with them, with Milton Hay obviously coaching, and then they're really starting to establish themselves leading into that Rugby World Cup, and obviously built around big boys, powerful boys who love a forward-orientated game. To be fair, I don't think they were anything too fancy in the backs, but they would compete with most sides up front. And going to that World Cup, how was that as an experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. It was I'd done for a period of about 2 years. I sort of went over there just during the Six Nations B window and a few of the November tests. But to get a 12-week, I think it was, sort of prep time to lead into that World Cup was a great experience, and just to have the time to work on a lot of things and spend that time as a group together and build up to the World Cup. I guess the draw worked out pretty well, I think, for the Georgian team, having we had Tonga first up and pretty much knew that was the key game, so we could really build towards that, and that was the target really. And then anything after that, if we could get through that, get a result.
Because you had the All Blacks in the pool as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, the All Blacks was I think it was the third game. Yeah, we had Tonga, Argentina, All Blacks, and finished with Namibia.
That was the All Blacks Georgia game, a terrible game of rugby, wasn't it? I seem to remember watching it and going, "This is dour."
Yeah, it was Cardiff. Yeah, it wasn't the prettiest game.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Walshy, if you're listening in, or Ben, if you can see those, I think there's a couple of questions come through. So if you just want to, if they're relevant questions, just fire them through. And then, so time to come home, was it after some time at Montpellier, and what the pull of working with some referees was the driver, obviously?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was it was time to come home. We've got a young family, a little boy who's 2.5 now, and he was born over in Montpellier. And then my partner, she was working prior to that in the UK, and was pretty keen to sort of get back into her career as well. So it was a bit difficult to sort of start that up, I guess, in France with the language and stuff. So it was pretty good timing for us just to come back and put down some roots back home. And
yeah, no, fair enough. Just got I can see these questions here. Warren, what's the biggest difference for refs to work on when moving from playing to refereeing? Actually, we'll maybe come back to that one at the end. Warren, I'll come back to that. So I just want to, if there's no questions on Scotty's background there, I'll just move through into. I sort of wanted to go through, work through, I guess, prehab, a bit of recovery type stuff, and then a bit of a training program, sort of moving into hopefully some club footy and a bit of rugby later on. But I guess, Scott, we're really trying to cater for all ages, all physical abilities in refereeing. And when we sort of spoke, and this is something JT drove with us, VJ, our physio, drives, and you're obviously continuing to drive, but the importance of the prehab side of things, trying to build that basic strength and aid in that injury prevention. And you've given me, I'll put up 5 different exercises here. Do you just want to talk through these and the importance of that, doing those prehab sort of exercises and bringing this into your program or what you're doing?
Yep, sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously, refereeing it's a running-based sport, so there's some good stuff that can be done, and that doesn't always require necessarily going to a gym or putting a lot of weights on and things like that. That can really, I like to sort of think of them as building robustness in certain areas. So there's just a selection of exercises here that are good options to include. And again, these can be progressed and regressed to suit different levels and where you're at currently and with your strength levels. And so the first one here, you've got the soleus strength. So soleus is one of your calf muscles. That's a really important calf muscle, and it tends to be our main spring muscle. So when we're running, with the Achilles as well, it's a real propulsive muscle, and quite a key one for injury prevention, but also helping with increasing your running efficiency and economy. So an exercise you've got there is just a simple one up against the wall, starting on 2 legs with the knees bent about sort of 90 to 100 degrees, and just coming up onto the balls of the feet. So for example, you can start with just doing that as a hold position from anywhere to 15 to 30 seconds, and doing reps of that. and then it can be progressed onto a single leg version of that, same position, just lifting one foot off the ground.
Because it's fair to say referees of all ages, I think the older we get as referees, it seems to be calves and Achilles are the things that are the most common sort of niggle for us.
Yeah, and it's I mean, you get a certain amount of conditioning, I guess, from performing the sport itself and training runs and whatnot, but I guess it's a good way. It's important to isolate these sort of muscles as well at times. So I mean, it can be included as little as 1 to 2 times a week, and you still get benefit from it. And particularly with that one there, it's, I mean, when you're running, that muscle can absorb about 7 times your body weight, depending on what speed you're running at. So there's quite a lot of force that goes through that area.
Yeah, for sure. And what's that second one there, the single leg squat? What's the purpose of that one?
Yeah, so single leg squat. Again, this is one that doesn't require a lot of equipment. You can just simply use body weight and a bench or a step. So this is a good one just to involve again, working on a single leg is helpful. So you're working you're working on your asymmetrical differences. Quite often, sometimes when you're squatting on a double leg or with a barbell on your back, it's tough to see what side's pushing more than the other. So it's a good way to iron out any deficiencies you might have between legs.
It's definitely noticeable. Like I did this or one similar to this today, and you're definitely stronger on. Well, I guess most people are stronger on one side than the other, and I know you've said to me in the past, on that weaker side, maybe throw an extra 1 or 2 reps in just to try and get that strength and build that back up. So quite important as well, isn't it? Yeah,
definitely. And I mean, you'll always probably have a stronger side. It's just trying to close that gap a little bit, and so you're not favouring one side too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, with an exercise like that can be, I mean, you can add weight to the hands. You could put a weight vest on if needed, but even in itself, just with body weight and getting to a good depth, and that it's a pretty challenging exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a couple more here.
So you've got the adductor strength. So this is an isolated groin exercise. It's also referred to as a Copenhagen exercise. I'm not sure why, but I think it comes from football maybe. But yeah, simply using a chair or a bench. That progression in the image there with the knee up on the bench is what I'd say would be level 1. And then you'd hold that position for a period of time. Or you can hold it for a period of time, sorry, like you do in the calf one, and then you can work towards doing reps of it. Level 2 would be going and putting the ankle on the bench, so you've got a longer lever, so you'd just be a bit further out, so there's a bit more stress going through that groin area. This one here should be done with a really sort of either a static hold or a slow controlled tempo.
So is that going to be working the glutes as well, or is it more focused right in on that adductor?
Yeah, it's more focused on the adductor. You'll get a little bit of lateral core work. So in that picture there, his left oblique, so side abdominals will be working as well. Oh, sorry, right side abdominals will be working with the left groin. So you get a bit of cross diagonal pattern there, which is good. But yeah, it's mainly targeted on the groin area.
Yeah, that's probably another one of those common referee injuries behind calf, Achilles, and the groin. Probably comes in there as well.
Yeah, and going back to that single leg squat, even though it's not isolated as such, but just by being on one leg, you're still going to use the groin muscles, the glutes, the hamstrings, the quads obviously as well, to stabilize, because there's a lot of balance going on within that movement to control it. So the adductors are still working in a single leg squat, but more as a stabilizer, whereas in this adductor strength one here, they're getting a little bit more targeted and isolated.
Yeah, nice. And then the good old hamstring plank, get those hammies firing.
The hammies always tend to be a a tricky one. Sure, everyone's had probably some experience with hamstring, maybe tweaks or pulls. So, yeah, the good thing with the hamstrings, they can be, easily isolated with some body weight type exercises as well. So this one here is a plank. So you just start off by getting into a longest position. The knees are slightly bent, and then just lifting up. So you're trying to get your glutes firing as well, together with the hamstrings, and then making sure that you don't overarch the back too much. So you're trying to lift the pelvis off the ground by using your glutes and your hamstrings. So that is a level 1. That would be just simply lifting up, holding it for 10 to 15 seconds, and then going back down to the ground again, and repeating that a few times.
Is there one I've seen as well on the Swiss ball, like you're lying on your back, same sort of position, but rolling a Swiss ball back and forth? I mean, is that similar sort of exercise going to fire up the same sort of areas?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely working the same muscles. So you can just get a little bit more elevation, I guess, with the Swiss ball, and you get that shortening and lengthening as well of the hamstrings by going when you roll it in and out. Yeah, I'd say that would be probably if you're using the Swiss ball example, that would be more a sort of level 2, level 3 exercise, whereas that one there would be starting at sort of level 1. And then I'd go to, after that one there, going to a progression of just getting up into that position and then lifting one knee towards the chest and holding for single legs, and alternating that. Before maybe going to something like the Swiss ball one, or even on you've seen like the sliders you can use like furniture sliders, sliding in and out.
It's probably level 3 then. Yeah, they need to build up the strength first. So then, and then a bit of work on the core, stability type work.
Yep. So I mean, the core's really important. It's your link between your upper and lower limbs, and I sort of favour, I think, with core exercises, rather than doing a lot of sort of crunching and movement like sit-ups and things like that. I tend to favour static type movements where you're actually resisting motion. So that could be as simple as holding a plank. I guess we all know what a plank is, and then going to exercises like that where you lift an opposite arm, opposite leg, with the aim being trying to keep your pelvis nice and steady and stop it from tipping to one side.
Yeah. And so if we're doing these prehab exercises, is the idea that guys out there guys and girls would be starting to build this into their programs, and even sitting in front of the telly doing them at home, 2-3 times a week is obviously better than nothing. But what's the gold standard in terms of working in some of this sort of stuff around what you're doing with your physical work?
Yeah, I think the frequency is important. So if you can do it, whenever it sort of fits in, it doesn't have to be a long session, but it could be just, as you said, it could be just getting it in front of the telly and doing sort of 10 to 15 minutes. But if it's more frequent and regular, you'll get better benefit from it. And then obviously you're going to adapt to a certain level of each exercise. So trying to progress gradually without compensating for technique, I'd say is important. Don't be in too much of a hurry to try and get to the next level. Just make sure the technique's down packed first before adding any weight or trying another variation of the exercise. Yeah.
So would you also use these when Mike's about to go for his run around Taupo streets or whatever at 8 in the morning, like maybe dropping in 1 or 2 of these as a bit of a warm up type hit as well?
Yeah, definitely. It's a good way to get get activation, and particularly one around the calf and Achilles area. Like if you've got a bit of a grumbly Achilles tendon, or any sort of foot lower limb issue, those calf holds tend to work quite well. They often work as a bit of a natural sort of painkiller, I guess. You can do, particularly when you're doing a static hold. So if you're just coming up and holding for anywhere from 10 seconds to a minute, works well as a warm up, but also trying to get the Achilles and calf complex nice and warm and ready to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's good stuff. And so I think those are just some simple sort of prehab sort of exercise you can do, and just bring them in where you can. And I think anything's better than nothing. But then if we think about, I guess this fits into pre-workout or post-workout as well. There's a range of things that we use at varying levels, I suppose. A lot of people obviously seen foam rollers, but spiky balls quite good as well for a range of different things, and getting into those trigger points, or bands as a bit of a warm-up type exercise. What's your thoughts or preferences around these sort of tools we've got in our kit bag now?
Around the recovery is hugely important, and things like foam rollers and the hard balls are really good, and particularly around areas like your calf, glute, the feet, that are sort of tend to get quite a lot of trigger points in those areas, and are pretty well hammered on a regular basis. So I think the thing with those sort of things as well, you do tend to feel better after using them. So even if it's a little bit of a placebo, sometimes you tend to feel a little bit looser and sort of ready to go. So I think it's a really good investment to have those things. That they don't cost a lot either, and it's a good way to try and keep those body parts supple and trigger free.
I think I've found the spiky ball really useful. Like it's obviously a bit bigger than a golf ball, but probably maybe about the size of a softball, fraction smaller. But it fits in your bag pretty easy, and it not getting any younger, and to get those trigger points in the glutes or in the calf are really good. And then even again sitting in front of the telly, you can do this sort of stuff and chip away at it and just get the body moving. And I think even in the morning, I do a bit of this before I even get going. The body's a bit stiff and sore in the morning, and having a good roll on the foam roller or getting the spiky ball in there is quite useful. Any thoughts? I know a lot of the lads and ladies out there will have some sort of skins. They were quite popular a few years ago. Are they still as popular or effective as maybe what they used to be in the past, or as popular as what they used to be?
Yeah, I think they're still pretty popular. I think it's another one that's it's not going to replace good nutrition and sleep, obviously, as your main forms of recovery, but it's another one that's useful and definitely doesn't hurt, and can give some effect, I think. Even having if it's not the full skins, like just the lower leg, sort of compression socks, seen come sometimes quite popular, and are quite good. I've seen a few people use them and actually run in them still. I'm sort of not too sure on that, whether it's always the best idea, but I think as a recovery modality, it's a good one to have in your toolbox, for sure.
Sometimes it might just be a warmth thing on one of those cold winter Saturday mornings as we try and get the legs moving.
Not
do anything more than just keep us
after
warm.
The warm up. I think as well, another thing that it could be as a valuable addition into that whole recovery toolbox, and you could even class it as, I suppose, it's prehab as well as a stretching band. So either an elastic like a longer rubber elastic band, or you can actually buy proper stretch bands. They're really useful just to give yourself a little bit of extra range of motion in certain stretches. So hamstrings, hip flexors, quads, even some sort of glute lower back type stretches. I've found it being really useful. And
yeah, I think the key is that everyone's going to be different, isn't it? You got to find what works for you, and if something works for you as a way to warm up or as a recovery, then get into it. There's plenty of options out there for sure. We'll jump into a bit of a pre-season plan. So I don't know if many of you have seen, but Scotty's done up a plan on, or if you've been to the Rugby Toolbox, I'll try and click on it here. Has that come through? Can you see my screen, or you can see the website there?
Yes.
Perfect. So if you've never been onto Rugby Toolbox, I suggest going in there and have a look. And the referee side of things has sort of been populated more and more, I guess, through this lockdown period. It's had a bit more content put in there. So there's a fair bit of stuff in there now, as you can see. A lot of these online meetings have been recorded and stored up there. So go and have a look in there. And I'll just take you through to the session that Scott's put on here. But it's this one here, Level 2 COVID-19 running program. And you just go in here and open this up. And has that come through? Can you see that okay?
Yep, that's all okay.
Yep.
Perfect. So Scotty, do you just want to touch on, I guess, the idea of this this program here, and it may be a useful resource for people to work through as hopefully we're building into some footy in the near future?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I'm looking at, I've just got it up as a PDF. That's the week 1, week 2.
Yeah, 4-week progressive running. So I just scroll it through. I guess just talk top line to it, and we can scroll through just some of the detail and talk through a bit of that.
Yeah, so this is just a simple 4-week progression. So I've just put some sort of approximate volumes in there, depending on what level you're at or you want to get to, with the idea being that there's a 3-week build up in volume, and then a slight deload in the 4th week, and then after that some session examples that can be incorporated into, particularly around the MAS type sessions, so running your intervals.
So what does MAS mean?
So MAS is max aerobic speed. So these are sessions where you're running at a particular intensity based off your max aerobic speed, which is generally determined through a fitness test, like a yo-yo or a beat test. Yo-yo tends to work quite well for this. It can be done off a Bronco, which is the repeated shuttle test that's used across quite a lot of teams now.
Really, when I think of an MAS session and you slot them into our program, you just sort of know that that's going to be a gut buster. So it's not necessarily long distance in terms of kilometres, but it's high intensity where your heart rate, I guess, is quite high, fairly close to your max, and that sort of top echelon where you're really working and getting, I guess, your body used to being under fatigue. And so it's high intensity and short rest times, isn't it, to try and get that heart rate right up? Yeah.
So you're running at a speed that, so for example, like as an example, if you did a yo-yo test and you finished at level 17 on the yo-yo, that would give you a certain speed where you could program your intervals based off that speed, where you sort of finished it in the test, which is, would be close probably to your maximal effort.
So like here's an example here, isn't it? If you're doing a level 17 on the yo-yo and you want to do a 60-second interval where you're looking at trying to hit that 266 meter sort of mark. So, you find a footy field and use that as your gauge, and then you go for 60 seconds and then recover for 60, or the one I'm quite often doing is the 70, 72, 75 meters out and back in the 30 seconds and 30-second recovery, and you do that 5-6 times, and so your heart rate never really fully drops, but it's up there, and
Yeah.
I guess getting your body conditioned to what a game might be, and heart rate a little bit higher than just going out to, and the idea, I like the idea of the MASs because it complements, I suppose, what you're doing, your road running or your treadmill running or just your standard straight line running. This is sort of a little bit different, isn't it? Where you can incorporate some turns or some interval shuttle type stuff as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you can do that. You can either run them as a straight line, but quite often, as we do, Fraser's run them as shuttles. So you're getting that turning in, yeah. And yeah, it is a good complement because you don't have to. The sessions don't particularly have to be long, but you get some good intensity in your running. That can, that's a nice top up to your aerobic base that you'll have through your sort of general trail runs or whatever it may be, your 5K road runs.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of on the toolbox and what this document you've got here is there's a bit of a suite of a few different variations of an MAS type session. So, I'm sure a lot of you are like me. It's pretty tough to get out there, particularly at the moment, by yourself and run a session where I can go into one of these sessions and go, righto, I'm gonna hit a classic broken Bronco, and then I'm gonna do an 88, and you know what you're doing. It's all there for you, and it's a bit of a challenge and something a little bit different as well, rather than just running a 3K or 6K road run. It's good variety.
Yeah. And it's easy to progress or regress as well, and it gives you some sort of targets to try and aim towards. Even using that table as an example, you might start on level 16 and try and increase 5% of that distance every 2 or 3 weeks. So it's quite easy to implement. And doesn't take a lot of gear. Again, maybe just a couple of cones and stepping out the measurements.
So how many of these intervals are you looking to do? So if we're looking at the level 17 yo-yo, a 30-second interval at 133 meters. So how many of those repeats are you looking to do? So if we're doing 5 or 6, are then having a 2-3 minute break and then going again, sort of thing?
Yeah. Generally, like most of the ones I've put in this example, there a set of those would take around anywhere from sort of 5 to 7 minutes. So you're looking at blocks of work around about that, obviously with little bits of rest in those 5 to 7 minutes as well. And then you'd take a longer 2 to 3 minute rest before either repeating the same one or maybe doing a slightly different one in the same session. Yeah.
So there's a really good range of variety in there. So if you here's an example of some weeks, and he's got the MASs in here. Well, this is when you go in and you pick some of these to do. And the tempo hundreds you've got in here as well that's probably more just a bit of variety and you're not going to get your heart rate quite as high in the tempo hundreds necessarily.
Yeah, it's often quite a good sort of recovery run, and there's no change of direction, but I find it sometimes just a good run to work on a bit of technique. So you're running in a straight line, but you're really trying to just focus on your efficiency of running. So you can still do it at an okay, maybe anywhere from sort of 60 to 80% max speed, depending on how you're feeling. But really working on that economy of running it's a good and it's not a hugely taxing session in terms of you should be able to recover fairly easily from it.
Yeah, nice. I think the important thing is as the thought of Super Rugby gets closer, and we've sort of been building up to that 13th of June, hopefully start date. It's through lockdown for me personally and the other full-time boys, we've sort of just been trying to maintain a bit of a base, and then once we had a bit of a green light in terms of now we've got a start date, you try and ramp up the speed side of stuff as well and the sprint based sessions. So because I think that's the thing. If often when we go out and we referee the first couple of games of rugby for the year, the body may not be used to the sprint work we do in a game, or often the change of direction work as well. So I think the more you can bring into the elite, into actually going out to referee your first couple of games on a Saturday morning or whenever it might be, again, it just helps and limits that chance of injury. Is probably a big part of it too, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, even if sometimes you might not get up to a max speed in a game, or depending on the type, conditions, etc. But I think where you can, it's important to have exposure to good levels of speed and accelerations, decelerations as well in training, so that, like you say, it's not a shock to the body if it does happen.
Yeah.
And also, there's no, I mean, barring, if you haven't got any niggles and things like that, and it's a good way to, if you can have, regular speed and accelerations, etc. in your training, it's a good way to enhance your running efficiency. So everything below that speed or intensity of acceleration you'll become more efficient at doing that as well over time.
Yeah, and I think it's one we often neglect too. And we've got a good question just following off the back of that from Ben, just asking around warm-ups. Do you reckon your warm-up or warm down should differ if you're doing just your standard 5K road run versus an interval session? Like all of us, I think he finds that probably does a similar sort of warm-up for both, but the body's a bit sore. It takes probably a little bit longer to recover from the interval session than just a straight road run.
Yeah. I mean, often with a road run, I guess you can use the first part of the run to sort of ease into it, and you sort of warm up gradually. With an interval session, you want to be trying to reach a certain intensity fairly quickly on that first set of intervals. So I think in the warm up, it's a good time to, after you've done, you might do some dynamic stretching and some drills, some skipping and things like that. But actually just even simply doing some repeat accelerations, decelerations, some change of direction, some lateral shuffling, and building up to a good intensity of work and speed and acceleration particularly. You can still have plenty of rest between them, but it actually primes you up better for the interval session that's going to follow.
Yeah. And I think naturally, when you're doing your first few speed sessions, or you're trying to ramp things up back into the start of the season, your body is going to be a bit sore the next day. That's only natural too, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So I definitely recommend going in to have a look at that. We've just sort of touched on it, but it's a really good resource. Use it to whatever level you're at. Like, it's just an idea, but like with training, we get a bit sick of doing our own training or thinking of sessions, and in here there's a whole range of different ideas and things, and I'd recommend going and have a look at that. So I'll just go back to the plan. Actually, I was going to show. Can you see that on the screen as well? Does that come up?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is here's just another example. This is what Scott's got for us. Here's a couple of ideas. Take a screenshot or whatever of some longer type drills as you're building back up into your speed side of things. Again, they're quite good. You pick one there and do one of those as part of a session in the week. So if you get a screenshot of that, or go back and have a look at the recording, or the acceleration, deceleration ones, again, similar sort of idea. Pick one and have a hit on one of those. And then he's given us the same sort of suite of MAS type sessions as well, which we can run through. So yeah, go through and have a look at those, and hopefully there's some value in there. Just before I jump to the next slide, has anyone got any questions on that? So for all up to speed, I've got a bit of a challenge, I think. Again, trying to mix up training ideas. This is something we did during lockdown. I think Scott sits at home and looks for these killer sort of sessions, but get the creative or get the competitive juices going and put a bit of a challenge out there. And the 100 Club Challenge is something if you want to have a crack at is not a bad little session. It's so the idea with it is you're going to do 100 of these, 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 lunges in total. So that's just 50 on each leg. 100 mountain, or actually 200 mountain climbers, but 100 on each leg. 100 bench dips, so that's the tricep ones. 100 star jumps and 100 second prone hold. So the key with this is you can go through and try and do 100 push-ups in one go. Good luck to you if you try it that way. But the idea is there's a bit of strategy involved in this one, and you mix it up however best you think you can get your fastest time. So you might start off by doing 50 star jumps and then jump into 20 push-ups and then 20 bench dips, and just keep track of what you've done until you've hit your targets on each one. And we did this as full-time referees, and I've sort of worked my gauge of what I deem to be excellent or good based off that. I was closer to the 20 than the 16, but a couple of our fitter boys got closer to the 16, and one of them actually went through and did the 100 push-ups in one go or in one sitting, and then moved to the squats, and obviously found it a bit slower. But there's a real there's a bit of strategy involved in this, and in terms of mixing up a session, it could be quite good, and I found it a good little challenge as well. And I've only done it once. I haven't bought myself to do it again, but I know I'd do things differently the second time and I get a faster time. So have a go at that. Maybe get a bit of a challenge amongst your association. See, there's obviously got to be some age handicap here. Rex Ward, I think you'd need a good 5-10 minute head start and a bit of a handicap there on you, Tom. But give it a go and see how you go, and let us know what your times are, because I'll be interested. I think mid-16s was the best we got. Jimmy Dolman was down there and going pretty good. So yeah, it was a good little session. Scotty, what did you get? You'd be sub 16, were you?
Oh hell no, no. I was 17s. Yeah, no,
Nice.
It wasn't. But yeah, a bit of strategy. It's I think I'd do it differently next time around.
Yeah, nice. David Walsh, he'd be good for 16, 17. I would have thought too.
It looks more like a training session. I'd do 100 on Sunday, 100 squats on Monday, 100 lunges on Tuesday. It looks like a week-long exercise to me, Mike.
Yeah, well, that's another way to do it. Your time might be your time might blow out a bit. Tim Pickerell's talking a big game and reckon he might have got one over his brother, which I would have put money on Tim as well. But we'd have to see the video evidence. Put the old time lapse on for the proof.
I'll put $5 on Tim.
Yeah, me too. So look, that's sort of I guess the guts of what I sort of thought would go through with Scott tonight, just by way of, hopefully, I guess we're all being optimistic here and that we're going to get some footy in the near future, but trying to build back up to the start of the season, and really just open up if there's any other questions out there that people want to know while we've got Scott on the line. Thoughts about your training, any ideas, anything else?
Happy to fire through my email, Mike, as well, if anyone wants to reach out. Any questions at a later date too? What is
your email? Put that over and might get bombarded.
Shall I just pop it on the messenger there?
Oh yeah. So I was just going to ask just one quick one then. What do you reckon on game day in terms of that warm up? What do you it's a cold Wellington day. Wouldn't be cold in Blenheim, but it mostly is in rugby season in Wellington. What do you reckon is a minimum sort of warm up we should be trying to do to get us going for the game?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think obviously it's key to try and get yourself to a level where you're particularly around speed and making sure that you get close to what you're going to be doing in the game. So again, starting off with some dynamic movement, and then working through and getting particularly around the Achilles calf area, making sure that there's some good movement. And again, you might end up, not a bad idea to have some of those static sort of movement holds, like the calf raises and things like that were shown before, to start with, even if it's in the changing room or wherever, and then move into some running based stuff outside. But I think you need to allow for a good at least 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And longer on the colder days, or stay in the car with the heater on is always a good tip too.
Yeah, keep the skins on, the compressions on it there.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, look, if there's no other questions, we'll call it there. And that's been awesome, Scott. Appreciate your time tonight, and hopefully people out there have got something out of it. And fingers crossed we get into some rugby sometime soon.
Yeah, good to chat, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks, team. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you.